All right, Stephanie.
Okay, great. Since this is a voting meeting, I'll be taking attendance. Senator Malcolm Augustine,
Present.
Delegate Lily Chi, Andrew Place,
Present.
Ryan Powell,
Present.
Stephanie Kane,
Present.
Ivy Baker as proxy for Jennifer Smith Funn, Nancy Sopko,
Here.
Charles Washington, Sarah Battisti, and Russell Lacey.
Present.
Thanks. Back to you.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, a couple of housekeeping things. We have the meeting today, and following this meeting, we will do what we've done the past week, and Stephanie will recirculate draft language with what we've amended through here. And if members also want to feed into that in the interim to add perhaps draft language, please feel free. We are then going to meet on September 10th for another final voting session. Any recommendations that come out of this working group, we will be passing forward to the Climate Commission on the 11th of September. And it's a reminder for all of us that these proposals are yours. They belong to each one of us individually and collectively. This reminder that this is not an MDE, even though I'm an MDE, and MDE is staffing this. But these are absolute. This is the voice of this working group, and I need to make sure that that is always understood, both within the group as well as anything that comes out of this group. This is your work product. Also noting that there is no requirement, it's not a statutory requirement that we make any recommendations to the Climate Commission. I think the sense was that the statute that created this working group gave us the microphone to offer recommendations to the Climate Commission writ large, and whether we think there's anything of value to speak into that microphone, that's our call, but we shouldn't be under any sense of obligation to put anything forward or to put a given number or anything else. Let's ensure that we're not just putting something forward for the sake of putting something forward. As well as noting that this working group does not sunset, and this work will continue into next year. We have this deadline of September 11th to get any recommendations forward to the Climate Commission for their consideration into their annual report to the governor and their legislature. But that's the only date we have, and why we're working ahead of that date to get anything we want forward. But the work will continue, and I also chair the Energy Resilience and Efficiency Working Group, and that group intends to put a recommendations forward in the form of a white paper into January of next year, so that that's visible to the legislature for what the thinking of is of that working group. And so we can clearly do something along those lines as well, and then also continue this work through into next year and have recommendations for next fall. And also to that point, that the study report that is statutorily due by the end of the year to the legislature and the governor can also be a vehicle for us to put forward recommendations. With that, I would also posit or offer for your agreement or not agreement that whatever comes out of these voting sessions we're having and have had and doing again today, we revisit everything at the end of or towards the conclusion of our September 10th meeting, and make a collective decision whether all of these, if anything that passes, there's a basket goes forward to the commission, or a subset, or one. This has also come up in the energy resilience working group that perhaps there's an interest in highlighting one critically important one and not watering that impact down by having others associated with it. But there's no reason for us to take that tack. But I wanted to put that out there, that may be if we put this basket together as draft proposals, and then revisit them just to do an absolute check. Okay, yeah, these 3, these 5, these 2. The language is good, but let's do a subset of those or do them all. But I wanted to put that out there as an option for us towards the end of our meeting next on the 10th of September. Any feedback? All right, I'm seeing nods and agreement, so I will run with that. All right, so to jumping into our work ahead of us, please let me know, and Stephanie can put the language up on the screen here. But let's start to work through these draft recommendations. So draft recommendation 1. And Stephanie, there we go.
So I don't know if the members have a preference. I do have these in presentation format, but also having the Word document might allow us to edit in real time if that's preferred.
And you may want to increase the font if you can put it in the non-comment format. Give us a bit better read, but all right. I will. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a little bit easier to read, at least for me. Yeah, mine as well. All right, if you want to scroll down, Stephanie, to the proposal itself, I will go ahead and I'll certainly read the first paragraph. The state should create a pilot program to drive development of EV charging infrastructure in Maryland convenience stores that integrates best practices for healthy and affordable food options. This program would draw in existing funding incentives for small business convenience stores and gas stations to install EV charging infrastructure. Thoughts? Ryan? Yeah, I mean, I think I've said this before, but it seems like the mandate is to touch on energy. And so, I mean, I tend to think this should stay away from talking about food. I think the goals in relation to food are good ones, but I think this should be focused on energy, but that's at least my 2 cents.
I was also thinking the same. I would posit an amendment to that second paragraph. We're getting the words "to address." I would move to remove that paragraph in totality, as well as in the third line on the proposal, starting with the word "stores." Removing the language that starts with "that" and to the end of that sentence. So removing "that integrates best practices for healthy food options." Leaving the word "stores" there. So yes, removing that clause and then removing that second paragraph in totality. Russell?
There we go. So again, I'm late. This is only my second meeting talking about the details. I used to be a salesman on the road frequently and sadly used convenience stores too often to feed myself. They tend to be, if you're in an urban area or more suburban, tightly packed suburban area, small parking lots. How are they going to be incentivized to have unless it's a level 3 charger, the new level 3 chargers, which are really just trying to hit the road where you can charge in 30 minutes. Most people at a convenience store are less than 10 minutes in and out.
Yep.
And then a lot of convenience stores don't have, like, they're turning over so often I don't know how they'd have a parking spot to give up for a 45-minute charge. So was that ever part of the discussion? Like what type of charge is going to be put in?
Yeah, it has not been discussed, and I would posit that that would be the intent behind seeing this as a pilot program that would research and analyze all these questions.
Okay.
Nancy?
Yeah, I just want to offer my own real world experience on that front. I own a Tesla and I'm on the road quite a bit, and Wawa typically has a lot of charging stations, and they designate an area of their parking lot for about 10 of them. So it actually is a great example of coexistence. And as I think you've said on another call, Russell, the charging does get quicker. Especially with the Tesla charging stations, they are quite quick. So, so I don't think this is as burdensome as some may think.
Well, my point was that I'm on River Road in Bethesda, Maryland. The 7-Eleven near me has 15 spots, and that's it. Wawas are a different story. I get that. Wawas and Sheetz and Royal Farm, they tend to have 15 gas pumps, probably an acre of land or better that they're sited on, and they tend to be in the outer burbs or more rural areas versus your typical convenience store that's close in, inside the Beltway, Baltimore, DC, I say DC, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, where it's more densely populated. So I understand what you're saying regarding Sheetz and Wawas, but a lot of these stores that don't have, they're talking about convenience stores, not gas stations. They don't even have gas pumps, unless I don't understand the word convenience in this instance.
Yeah, so I'll kind of pipe in there, and I saw that one of my recommendations was on there of just expanding the programs that are already there. I tend to think that it's best to expand those programs and let the market decide where they make the most sense. So there might be places, where you're in the city where it just doesn't make sense to tie them in with a convenience store, just because there's not enough space. And there's going to be other places where it might make more sense. But, to me, simpler is better versus creating another program that businesses have to kind of wade through. If there's programs out there that are already working, which were mentioned, better to expand those than to try to, create more complexity. That's my general opinion. I think those businesses will be able to make that judgment. There might be some marketing to help them be aware of the programs and make that choice, but yeah.
So, Ron, are you moving that we eliminate this recommendation in its entirety?
Well, I think along the right-hand side, there's comment 2, and I'm looking at my own piece of paper, which is that the recommendation is to potentially expand existing MEA programs that are out there for charging. And that's, if there's programs that are working and they're helping to get charging expanded, to me, that makes the most sense.
I would agree with that.
Senator Augustine?
Thank you. So the existing programs make sense. And I do understand the expansion of it, but what I would ask is the small business, like the small business nexus, which I think is where that would be my question. Would be just that.
Cindy, you'd like to comment?
I do have a quick comment. I'm not sure if it informs the decision making here, but quick comment is due to.
Sorry, Cindy, you've frozen up.
You
think you're
froze.
back. I think you're back now, Cindy.
That was my fault. I messed with my plug-in, my computer a little bit, sorry. But I'm back. The quick update that I wanted to remind this group is that I did reach out to the Retailers Association to let them know that we were considering this recommendation per this working group's request. And we did get a contact specifically from Wawa that's interested in applying and potentially applying and just learning more about MEA's program. So wanted to let this group know that that meeting will occur just due to scheduling in a couple of weeks from now.
Thank you, Cindy. Senator Augustine?
Yeah, I would say just based on our meeting, the last meeting that we had, which was, it was pretty, that was again associated with the report and how within that there was going to be some research and work done with a entity that's looking to move to the EV charging. I guess I'm trying to say that this may just not be ready to be a recommendation when we are still learning about this and how it would fit for the EV grid, which we're still trying to figure that part out. And then again, the tie to the small business when we are in the midst of getting more information that might shed some light on it.
What's the will of the group? Russell?
Well, I would, if following what the senator said, if the group could simplify the recommendation, and then based on what Ryan mentioned, push to expand the program, because his note indicated it's already overprescribed. So it's obvious more resources are needed there while these other things get hashed out. And certainly Wawa's wouldn't qualify as a small business. I just,
Ryan, I'm trying not to put words into what you laid out there, but if we removed the reference to a pilot program, okay, I think your interest is not creating another program, not another layer that it already exists. Perhaps that the recommendation is to the need for the expansion of the existing programs within MEA, for example.
I mean, that's where I'm at. When I think about all this, generally what we need for this transition is speed. We need to move faster than we're moving right now, particularly to meet the state's goals. So simplicity, using what's already out there, to me makes a lot of sense. And the fact that if the program is oversubscribed, then that means it's working and it's not to the point where it's topped off yet, where you might need more marketing necessarily. If you want to get it in get that money deployed to a certain sector, then maybe marketing towards a certain sector could make sense. But if it's already overprescribed, then or subscribed, then it seems to be working.
The only thing that I just would jump in is, do we know if it's oversubscribed with big business like Wawa when our charge is to try to help small business and keep what Russell said?
great point.
Yeah. What about wording that along the lines of expand existing programs within the existing program within MEA with a focus on small business applications?
That sounds good to me.
That sounds pretty good to me. I would say as long as these charging stations and the rebates fit within the called the wherewithal of the businesses we're targeting, and that's something I don't know, but I think generally that sounds good to me.
Agree.
Stephanie, are you putting that language forward here?
Yes, I'm trying to capture that. So the state should expand existing EV programs within MEA with a focus on small businesses.
EV infrastructure, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be hesitant. Part of me wants to put the word carve out in there, but I don't. Yeah, the word carve out is freighted with pejorative references, but and we shouldn't. I would argue that we probably shouldn't be saying, hey, there should be a carve out and what the carve out should be. But whether we've achieved that by using the phrase with a focus. Or or how about with a designated focus? Russell?
I'm sorry. I had to step out to blow my nose. I apologize. Was I asked a question?
Or you're good, sorry?
I'm good.
Okay. Has everyone seen that language that Stephanie's put into the chat, or into the comment?
Yes.
Stephanie, are you able to drop that into the document itself? Just
Yeah, I
paste?
can. I just wanted to make sure I had it before I made the edit.
Okay. And then I would posit that we can then do away with the wording that follows to drive development of EV charging infrastructure, because you've just said that in that added language. And then maybe also, do we need, I mean, are we then eliminating the convenience store piece? Because we're focusing on small businesses, even though that they may well be the recipients, but not necessarily the only recipients of this focus.
I'm personally fine with that. I think to Russell's point, there's going to be, some places that it doesn't necessarily make sense, other places where it would, and there's probably lots of small businesses even outside of gas stations where it could make sense, where someone's going to be there for a half an hour or an hour for appointment or something. So it makes sense to me.
What about adding the word public infrastructure, existing public EV infrastructure? Sorry. Yeah, I think I'm kind of captured that. I think isn't the intent of what we're all thinking about that these are publicly accessible EV charging, not on someone's just small business that's only for their small business use?
But that's what a convenience store is, a small business.
Yeah, I'm just trying not to limit. I'm just to ensure that these are the intent of this working group's work is that these are publicly accessible, which expands the value of adding these of having state money into charging infrastructure, but also that then it captures that you're not. Someone's got a small business and these are only for their use, but the intent here is that for places where people are coming, that public access, it might be an office park. That may not be a small business, but a say it's a small business in a mall, just to throw stuff out, in a strip mall, that there may be this program would envision putting state funds incentivizing those, because they're supporting that small business, but they're also supporting the public access to that. And the public may be in that and coming to that small business to either do business there or do business in the neighborhood. Yeah, like they might come to a convenience store.
And that I would think that this would work for perhaps a law firm that's a standalone office building, small firm. People are in there for a period of time. Restaurants that might have more parking than less parking, and somebody's there for a while, 45 minutes to an hour. Places like that are small businesses that are accessible. They're not behind a wall necessarily, but my presumption is even with convenience stores, if the store closes, the chargers would be off, or is there wording that they would have to be on 24/7?
I think that's I like the general idea, but then I think you have to, if you go with that, you got to get into the definition of what does publicly available mean, which then starts to get, I think, a bit more complicated. Does it mean available to like a certain amount of people, certain time of day? So that's, yeah, I think that has to be thought about.
So, Ryan, are you thinking we should not include the word public just to avoid that definitional challenge? Or should we work to try to put some definition onto it?
I think it would come down to whether or not these programs end up having money going to places where, you might only have a handful of people using them. I suspect probably not, but I don't know. And I know Cindy's got her hand up.
Cindy?
So due to both state and federal requirements, so there's federal funding from NEVI, National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure, formula grant funding. There's considerations from the Public Service Commission regarding how they design EV programs, if it's funded through the utilities. There's a variety of different requirements that MEA has to consider when they design programs. One of them being, to Russell's point, these must be fast chargers. Another one also being, to Andrew's good point, that they have to be in publicly accessible areas. So by definition, this will be in public areas.
Yeah, and maybe I can offer that we will ascertain that is absolutely the case with MEA and get out to you the language that's in the MEA programs to ensure that that is actually codified. Would that be useful?
Yes.
Yeah, and anecdotally, I am a victim, just like the rest of you, on eating far too often in convenience stores as I'm traveling, since I live 4 hours from Baltimore, trying to kill myself with convenience store food. So I'm well acquainted with all our sitting in parking lots and doing work. And just yesterday, I was sitting in a parking lot of a small business restaurant for 3 hours as I was on a PJM call. So I see that there might have been real advantage for me to be able to charge in that restaurant parking lot as I sat there and then went in for a cup of coffee after I sat in their parking lot. So anyway, just anecdote.
May I ask Cindy a question?
Yes, please.
Cindy, is that when you said a fast charger, does it signify a level 2 or level 3 charger, or just not a level 1?
I would have to look at the specific requirements. I know for a fact it's at least level 2. It might be even level 3.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll confirm that, and I think it is level 2. But let's confirm that, and within a day or so, we'll get that out to you, and so we can confirm, and then we can revisit this on the 10th if amendments are necessary. What's the wish of the group? Is the amended language suit?
It's fine. I say we're good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, it looks good to me.
All right. Let's just go ahead for the record and take a vote so we have that recorded. All those in favor of the amended language as is, please signify by saying aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you very much. And again, as I noted at the beginning of this call, we'll come back and revisit this towards the end of our September 10th meeting to ensure that this is locked in stone and this is what we want to put forward. Thank you. All right. Recommendation 2, there's substantial background. The recommendation itself is 3 lines on page 2. That's highlighted there now. Increased funding to the MCEC MEIA program to enable increased growth of small businesses, bringing advanced energy climate mitigation and adaptation solutions for market adoption more expeditiously. Sorry, I was tongue-tied over that one. And I would also note that as a process, if whatever we put forward, if anything, if whatever we put forward to the Climate Commission, I will lead those discussions at the Climate Commission, not only including the recommendation itself, but the background language itself. So they will have the context. So all of this will go forward to the, if we vote to approve this, all of this would go forward to the Climate Commission, and I would be making the verbal argument for this in the Climate Commission's meeting at the end of September. Stephanie?
Hello, thank you for doing that for us. I just wanted to flag, Stephanie had put this in as a comment, but as part of this discussion, this recommendation feels related to the Small Business Energy Transition Fund, which I know is proposing something new, but I just wanted to conceptually float the idea of kind of combining recommendations 2 and 3 in the sense of like buffering up the state's financial support of clean energy through the, MCEC and the, energy and climate technology landscape, but also this proposed new fund. So I just wanted to see how people like just sort of condenses it because they're thematically related. And I think we agreed at the last meeting that lobbying for the actual money is like more of an appropriations decision and wouldn't be in our work group's recommendations. So just wanted to start discussion, or we can vote on them separately.
Ryan?
Yeah, I would say that's something we could definitely do. When I was looking at the recommendation 3, and this one involves Department of Commerce, it is quite vague. So even if they were separate, it would need to be, I think, quite a bit more specific. I think the one on MEIA and the loans through MCEC, I believe it is, those might fit together because MCEC, is over top of MEIA. So if any money flowed to MEIA first, I'm trying to make sure I get all these acronyms straight, it first flow to MCEC, most likely. So I think this, the one you have there, that probably could be combined with the previous one, I would think. The commerce one, at least this is the first time I'm seeing it. If that was in there, I would certainly like to know many more details about it because I would probably be in charge of managing that.
Feel your pain. Stephanie?
That is a great flag, Ryan. So I think I might propose taking this second half of recommendation 3, moving it to recommendation 2 to discuss those as a group, and then we can get on to recommendation 3 and get some feedback from Ryan, because it sounds like he'll be the best to provide that. And I don't know if we'll need to change, having that the Small Business Energy Transition Revolving Loan Fund. We might need to wordsmith a little bit there, but I agree that it's mentioning the same organization, so that makes sense.
Okay. My only hesitancy is that these two that we're looking at now, what's highlighted and the one above it, one's a revolving loan, one's a grant fund, and they seem to be twins. And whether that's value in trying to keep them together. And although we can take it back offline and see if we can, how we massage this, but I just, in some ways, I'm wondering if we lose something if we don't have them sort of conjoined in a.
No, that's a good point. They're fraternal twins, not identical.
Yeah, and I'm an identical twin. So good point.
So you appreciate that.
I think it really depends on what that bit with the partnership with Department of Commerce and local community development and financial institutions, actually what that means, what that partnership is, because it looks like MCEC would be administrating that money, and so I would imagine they're the ones that actually have the money and make the decisions. But I think that's part of it right there.
Yeah, I think so this is what I added here was from our discussions in the last meeting, and I tried to integrate different stakeholders just because I think Department of Commerce really has those relationships with small businesses, whereas maybe I know Maryland Clean Energy Center does work with small businesses, but their focus is the clean energy portion. And so the reason why I put like Department of Commerce as well as the local community development financial institutions is to sort of get different perspectives in this sort of environment that we're trying to address of small businesses within clean energy.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm in close contact with the people at MIA and MCEC quite often, and we hand companies kind of back and forth depending on what resources we're looking for. So certainly that connection makes sense from a we'll call it marketing lead's not quite the right, or sales lead's not quite the right term, but getting companies into the correct funnel, so to speak.
Senator Augustine.
Thank you. So I guess to me, the higher level question is whether or not it makes sense to have this superstructure entity, the Small Business Energy Transition Grants Fund, as like instead of like worrying so much about the specifics of it. From a concept standpoint, does this make sense, and is this the recommendation that the work group would like to make? I'm asking that question.
I'm sorry, could you repeat just the last part of that?
So what I'm saying is that you all are talking about, and that's right, because it's written there, like nuts and bolts of the larger sort of concept, which is this Small Business Energy Transition Fund, which is the bigger sort of like the bigger idea. And I'm asking whether or not that is going to, how that will benefit. Do we believe as a group that that's going to be a benefit to small business by having this more centralized location versus really like worrying about sort of the weeds of it all?
Could you define what you mean by kind of a centralized location, and just maybe expand on what you're asking about? It might make it at least a little bit easier for me.
Sure. The beginning of the recommendation says create a small business energy transition fund, right? I'm asking the most fundamental of questions. Do we think that we should have this separate freestanding fund versus, like you had argued for in the previous discussion, we have existing programs, we have existing things that are doing, certain stuff. Should we have existing programs be more deliberate about small business, or are they already doing that? And so I'm asking the just like very fundamental question of the crux of the recommendation. Do we really think that we need to create a small business energy transition fund.
And I presume if that's not done, then we work with the CDFIs, which I presume are also the green banks. I don't know what counties have green banks. I know Montgomery County does. I don't know if Prince George's does. And that would be they have more feet on the ground through the local chambers and whatnot, talking about it. So spreading the word and getting the word out with systems already in place. If I'm following you correctly, Senator.
Yeah, and I'm just also, yes, I'm saying that, and I'm also just responding to Ryan saying, hey, you're creating a program. You're talking about creating a program inside of commerce.
Right.
So it's like, yeah.
It's already there.
If it is it already there, Ryan?
Not for energy specifically. The only thing in commerce we have related to energy is a manufacturing 4.0 program that helps businesses basically transition to lower energy forms of manufacturing. So think using AI or robotics or a whole bunch of other things like VFDs to reduce energy consumption. So that's really it at commerce. But I mean, I generally, that's if we can keep things simplified, if there's already people that have programs. And I just learned yesterday that Montgomery County actually covers the entire state with their green bank, which was news to me.
It's news to me too.
So better to use those existing, bits of infrastructure. I mean, if we had to rebuild this thing from the beginning, I think that we should have one overarching energy administration that covers all of these different things. We have MEA, but still there's lots of pockets, lots of different verticals within the state, but that's, I think, well beyond this this group. So
But maybe that is the recommendation, is like dedicating, either naming who we think it should be, or that these things should have more connectivity. Like they should have a liaison, like the clean energy transition. Maybe it's creating a position in state government that is helping do that and connect all these silos. Because it does, I agree with the senator very much that no need to duplicate efforts. There's a lot of moving parts, and it sounds like there's a lot of really good work already being done. But there's not like a clear roadmap, like a one-stop shop clearinghouse kind of situation.
No, I think
I like that direction a lot.
for me, if Maryland had something similar to NYSERDA that New York State has, that could help a lot because NYSERDA covers everything from utilities to tech development to incentives. It literally is a one-stop shop around that to help organize, everything the state does in relation to energy. And yeah, I've had that thought too about having some liaison, particularly around, when you have companies that go from ideation through the stage of startup, scaling, expansion, commercial, all the way through that cycle. We have all these programs, piles of programs, but as an entrepreneur, you have to go out and you have to find them versus having someone that can just point you in the right direction and connect you from the start.
Yeah, I've heard that feedback from businesses in rural areas as well.
Yeah, I mean, we have TEDCO, we have MIPS, we have Chesapeake Bay Seed Capital, we have piles and piles of, different chunks of funding in all different agencies. It's just that you have to find them and utilize them. And yeah, Russell, looks like you have something to say.
Well, I didn't mean to do that. I'm looking online at the I apologize. I was looking Google, and it talked about the Maryland Clean Energy group that already is a Maryland Green Bank with loan programs.
Yep, they have they do have a green bank within MCEC.
Focused on small businesses or more broad?
I was digging in and I didn't mean to distract from the conversation. I should have muted myself.
Stephanie, if I'm recalling, if memory serves, the origin of this recommendation came from you?
Oh, yeah, that's right. From the chamber, just thinking about helping small businesses, well, all businesses transition, but since we've been tasked with small business focus, and, acknowledging the difficulties, to Ryan's point, that small businesses have fewer resources to in-house, they have less staff time. I see that at the electric cooperatives, they're very lean. So like, they don't always have someone with enough time. Like, they've got people wearing a lot of hats at their organizations. And we ended up eliminating the plan idea because Senator Augustine had mentioned that there may be a more comprehensive energy plan coming from the governor's office, which, until that's, got more steam behind it, I think we can move forward with our own independent recommendations and should. But yeah, that was the idea behind it, was like acknowledging that businesses are going to need help with this. And I guess maybe that's the real nugget that we needed to get to, was like this clearinghouse or dedicated, employee to help with that. So I like the direction this conversation is going, and don't feel beholden to what is up on the screen, although the chamber put it forward.
Yeah, I mean, to
right.
some extent, my role at Commerce is to do some of this, which is to connect businesses with resources. That said, that I'm one person, that's part of my role. But yeah, there's lots of resources out there, and I ran my own company, and I can tell you, being a small business owner, you only have a very small amount of time you can focus on this sort of stuff. So if you look at it and it's very difficult to find this information or apply, you gotta move on to the next thing. Otherwise, you're gonna be underwater quickly.
Yeah, and I'm a small business owner too. I have a farm. I can relate, and you get lost in the acronyms in a big hurry. May I offer that we take this back, and that I'll work with Stephanie and Cindy to see if we can massage this into what you're recommending is sort of a clearinghouse, an FTE devoted to the small business piece of this transition, and bring it back to you for next week.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think we can keep working on it.
Okay. Stephanie, does that work for you? Okay. And Stephanie Vo, you're good? All right, good.
And honestly, one of the more efficient ways to do this might actually to have something like a large language model, chatbot sort of thing, but one that's well vetted to get lots of scale quickly. So you can have one FTE, but that one FTE can only talk to so many people. If you had a well-trained and, as I repeat, well-vetted model, you might be able to touch lots and lots of businesses, and in their own time and in their own place, more easily.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant. Sounds
like Ryan should be a participant in the offline workshopping of this.
Good. Well, I'm already moving on to figuring out what the mascot looks like.
Sorry, Ryan.
Still good to have a little Ryan mascot.
No, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how to get these things to run smoother and faster, and to make sure the resources that we already have are being utilized efficiently.
Perfect. All right. I think we've got marching orders. All right. We've got 8 minutes left. On page 4, recommendation 5, if I might offer, that recommendation fits very squarely into the work of the Energy Resilience and Efficiency Working Group, which I noted I also chair. would it be the interest of this our work group for us to move that over into that bucket and have them consider this?
That's fine.
I'm sorry, which group?
The Energy Resilience and Efficiency Working Group.
And for number 4 is what you said?
No, moving number 5, because this is focused on reliability, which is absolutely the wheelhouse of the mandate of that working group.
I would reject that proposal because the second half of our entire prompt is about facility closures. That's my opinion.
Nope. Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, it does tie in together. Yeah, let me just have a look at it a little more closely.
I might posit that this already exists, but someone can disabuse me of that. I'm a former commissioner, public utility commissioner.
Yeah, I would say this is facility closures obviously are a PJM issue as well, but PJM is seeing for the first time in its history facility closures not only driven by economics but also driven by state policies. And so I think there's a place, to my knowledge, there's nothing on the Maryland level since the Climate Solutions Now Act was passed, acknowledging that a state policy, they mentioned the idea of a reliability backstop in the Climate Solutions Now Act, but it's not defined what that actually means. So it seems like something that should be defined, particularly as organizations like PJM and the National NERC, the National Reliability Organizations, NERC and FERC, are starting to get really loud about having enough electrons. So, and like before it gets too far down the line of a closure, because that does happen. I know there was a nuclear plant in Illinois that was closing for economic reasons, and they had to claw it back to the tune of a lot of money because they didn't want a non-carbon emitting resource that was so reliable base load to go offline.
Yep.
Well, isn't the state also in discussion with a coal plant in Baltimore that was supposed to retire next year to keep it going?
Brandon Shores and Wagner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's an example of the system nominally working. They were required to remain online until the solution to the congestion problem is resolved. In this case, PJM chose a new transmission line or beefed up transmission lines.
Yeah, that also happened in Delaware with the Delaware's last coal plant. And what I will say, as a power supplier for the electric cooperatives, it is much more expensive for ratepayers to have to do the reliability must run payments to keep those coal facilities online. So if there's some kind of definition that will prevent it from getting too far down the line in the name of reliability so that it doesn't negatively impact ratepayers, I think it would be beneficial to the state.
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree. Yeah, the RMR cost of service remuneration is onerous, but I'm not sure what honestly, I'm not sure what the solution is other than merchant generators choosing to close. And do we command and control? Does the state of Maryland or PJM say, I mean, which is essentially what they did with the RMR, but force, and maybe this is your point, what you'd want is 5 years pre-notice or something before closure. But if I'm a merchant generator, I'm thinking, no, you can't I can't predict 5 years ahead of time, and I don't want to signal to the market that I'm going. And economics are going to change. I mean, really, what happened in the Brandon Shores case is the economics changed. They were going to convert from coal to oil, and then oil got more expensive, and the economics changed. So that's not something that could not, without a crystal ball, being predicted ahead of time. So I mean, in its way, I just feel we're stuck between a rock and a hard place, but.
Well, and I guess the way this is drafted is why it doesn't go into the specifics of what we would propose but it says the General Assembly should define that, like give a better idea, put in the state code a more specific backstop than what the Climate Solutions Now Act does, which is sort of the beginning paragraph, and that'll require involvement with the PSC and PJM. And then the sub-bullets are, helping provide specificity, but yeah, that's the idea behind it.
Okay.
So can I just say, like, I do not know what jurisdictional authority the state has in this matter. It's just, I just don't know what that is.
Yeah, and that's raised an interesting question too, because this might be a Federal Power Act challenge, the Federal Power Act. But
That's my understanding of the law, that it is. I don't want to get too much into it as a policymaker in this space, but that is my current interpretation at this
Well,
time.
I think, excuse me, Senator, I think what this would do is tie into the jurisdictional authority the General Assembly gave themselves by imposing carbon reduction goals, mandatory carbon reduction goals. It would be tied to that as well, that like before, and maybe it needs tightening of language to tie it more closely, but before
what mandatory, the goals are not mandatory by definition. They're just goals. So got to be clear with your language. They are goals. They are goals. They're not mandatory. They're goals. They're signals to the market, but they are not mandatory. And this market has been driven by economics. That's what's happening. But this is a longer and a different conversation. And I think that I was hoping we moved over the workforce development conversation. And I feel like that one is a little, I don't want to lose that as we are 1 minute away at the same time.
Yeah.
all right. Yeah, we are up against the hour, and I need to be respectful of all of us. Can we're meeting again on the 10th, and we will circulate another version of all of this work. And please, it'd be incredibly valuable if we continue this conversation via email in the days ahead of us here. It might very much facilitate our conversation in the 10th, but
I'll raise my hand to help shepherd maybe some changes on 5 based on the conversation we just had, because I think those are all good points made.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. All right. Great help. Great to see you all, and greatly appreciative of everybody's time in this. I know it's all valuable, so thank you for that as always.
Okay, but before we go, though,
Yeah.
This idea about the workforce transition plan, are we just not, you're just leaving that out? What was you just skipped over that one?
Yeah, and I did, because I clearly misstepped. I thought we might have a quick, because we had 8 minutes left, I thought we might have a quick resolution to number 5, but Stephanie pointed out rightly that yes, we have a mandate to look at statutory mandate to think about facility closure. So this is very germane to this working group, and it was me misstepping and thinking that I could utilize the 8 minutes, and if we got into number 4, we wouldn't get very far in the 8 minutes we had. So
okay.
That was what I was thinking.
I just want to say, like, I likely won't be able to be here on the 10th. And so I just want to express my support for the workforce transition plan, particularly if we can get it focused as well on the small business, people who are within small business. I just think we should always just stay close to that.
Okay. Appreciate it. Yeah, you'll be missed, Malcolm. Ryan?
Just really quickly, because I know we're at time. Maybe one way to gather some of these opinions might be to transition this to a Google Doc. And then when people have time, if they'd like, they can leave comments that could be discussed. But that's just something that might make it a bit easier to gather that, and more efficient as well, to use the actual meeting for discussion of those bits.
Perfect. Yes.
It's a great idea.
Well,
I had a small thing
I-
that I wanted to note about this one that I thought I like it a lot. I think that it instructs the Department of Labor to create it. And I thought, to the senator's point about a potential future energy plan, we could just add in other relevant executive agencies, or with our, like what we've discussed, or like the idea of a energy transition stuff. So like just leaving it a little bit open so that whichever agency is working on these things, like the recommendation would still fit and could be assigned where appropriate. So just food for thought since we're at time.
Sounds good.
I just wanted to make a note to Ryan. I think previously MD has said that having a Google Doc is not possible within their processing.
That's
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
if
That's right. Yeah, we can share with you, Ryan, as a fellow state employee, but we can't share with external parties. It's just an IT sharing thing that we have to adhere to.
yeah, maybe I'm illiterate here, but if Stephanie started it, she's outside the state system. Couldn't you host it, Stephanie? Bo?
the University of Maryland is still,
Oh.
I guess technically.
I would be
within-
happy to host it.
All right then, Stephanie Kane, you are on.
Yeah, we can do
Yeah.
that.
So Stephanie Kane is going to host the Google Docs, so we're around the firewalls.
It's great.
Does that work?
Thank you, Stephanie.
Happy to.
All right, much appreciated. Good
All
to
right.
see you all.
Yeah, I'll coordinate with y'all to make sure I upload the correct stuff.
Yeah, we'll reach out, Stephanie Kane. Thank you so much.
Seeing you all today.
All right.
Yes. Thanks for the
Take care.
extra conversation. Bye, y'all.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.